denial of airplanes. I mean, you name it. Oh, cell phones don't work on planes. Well, they're calling on airphones. And the Pentagon thing's one that pisses me off a lot, because if you don't have a plane hitting the Pentagon, then you don't have the hijackers that were on that plane. And if you don't admit that al-Hazmi and al-Mithar exist, then you can't connect them through Naweed al-Khat, Ahmad Basnan, and Omar Bayoumi back to Prince Turkish bin Fasil and Bandar Bush, which is direct Saudi state financing and logistical support to 9/11 hijackers, admitted by our own FBI and JAS report from the Senate, right there, without the Israel's angle at all. Like, you already have one state sponsor of 9/11 admitted by our own government, and yet nothing happens with our relationship with Saudi Arabia. You know, they had that big thing about the 28 pages, and the news just refused to talk about it. Like, there's all these things in WikiLeaks, and they just talk about the edges of it. You know, they don't go with the center. And so it's like, well, what are you supposed to do? Like, who are you supposed to tell if you do have this information? I got information on Israel giving support to 9/11 hijackers, and I've put it out there, and it has reached, over 1 million people or so, but that ain't enough. I mean, we have 300 million just in the U.S.
Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing you can do but keep putting it out. I mean, it is. The media is never going to touch it. I mean, the media, they're involved in this to some extent. I mean, at least they're
still lying about gas.
Yeah.
They had, 7 gas attacks in Syria?
They tried to float that out. Literally, just yesterday, I saw and of course, it was a journalist on Twitter tried to float, they were like, chemical weapons in Idlib, 4 rebels report getting hit with a chlorine canister or something. I was like, okay, sounds like even if true, which I doubt, sounds like something worth ramping up the entire U.S. military machine and getting it going for. It's like, honestly, I don't really care if Assad does gas ISIS. I mean, sounds like bullshit to me, but it's just like 4 ISIS members in Idlib report chlorine burns or something. It's like, they probably did that shit themselves, if it's real at all. It's just like...
It sounds like white helmet propaganda again.
It's like white helmet
Idlib is getting its ass kicked by the Syrian army right now.
Right.
I mean, Russia pounded them for 8 days straight, and then they lost 2 cities in the southwest part of Idlib. And so the bulwarks have been broken. So I would give that just a couple more weeks even. Idlib's going to get liberated. All the way up, except for the very northern tip near the Turkish border, there could be problems. But the Syrian war is almost over on the ground front. But did you notice yesterday the Israelis sent in balloons for some freaking reason with all this equipment on them? Probably looking for something. My guess would be where the S-300 is, because the S-300 radar has been active for a long time, but the batteries are loaded too now. So it's up and going. It wasn't before when Israel was doing all those airstrikes. So they sent in some balloons, and the Syrians shot them all down. This is Israel's war. That's what people have to understand. Like, this war in Syria is not some organic... Free Syrian Army rebellion against Assad after 10 years of peace with him being president. No, this is an Israeli plan. The refugees are part of the plan. This is a war for Israel, as was Iraq. Who lied about Iraq? What they say, weapons of mass destruction. Okay, specifically what? Niger forgeries, aluminum tubes, anthrax, and so on. And all those lies went back to the Office of Special Plans, which was 100% Jewish. Members of our Congress that are dual citizens that were just lying over and over again. The neocons, when they're like, the neocons lied us in the war, well, just like the communists back in the entire leadership of neocons were dual citizen Israeli. And that has to be pointed out, because I'm not saying I'm saying there are people who engage in ethnic nepotism, and these people are as racist as it gets. And they don't care about anybody other than their tribe, and they wanted a war with Iraq, and they were willing to lie about it. And one of those lies, like I said, was about the anthrax, which also ties back to 9/11.
Yes.
Yep. But before I get into that, I want to tell more about the dancing Israelis. So the original story is just this lady calls the cops about the 3 guys she witnessed, and then that same van got pulled over later. It wasn't until about 3 in the afternoon. and she'd seen them at 8:46 minimal, right? It turns out, like, after these guys, so they get arrested at 3, and there's 5 of them in the van this time. And one is the brother of someone that she had seen. It turns out he had been there too. She just didn't see him. But
Right.
And the 5th member. So the members are Sivan Kersberg and Paul Kersberg. They're brothers. Yarn Schmel, which is the guy that looks like Weird Al. or who'd you say before?
Gallagher.
Like
I said Gallagher.
Gallagher.
Weird
Yeah,
Al.
okay.
Weird Al.
Weird Al and Gallagher
Not
kind of
Jewish.
like.
Not Jewish.
Weird
no.
Al is not Jewish. He's Polish.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, his hair is like that and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's Oded Eldner and Omar Mamari. And Mamari is kind of not part of the crew. He was had only been in New York a couple weeks, but he had served in the military with Sivan, who recognized him and got him a job in the secondary business of urban moving systems. So he was putting boxes together and stuff like that. But he's in the van with them when they're on their way back from White Glove, which is another moving company. And on their person, they had a notepad with phone numbers on it to 5 other moving companies. So I guess keeping tabs on their competitors. No, they're all fronts.
Yeah.
Urban Moving System, most famous one because they, got caught celebrating red-handed. So all these guys go to prison, 72 days. Mamari cracks, cries, like tells everything he knows. The rest of them, they all lie. They're all lying, and they say, like, all their lies are different from each other's lies too. So it's not like they all lied one way. They just, because the cops separated them.
Yeah.
They didn't have their story straight. And so Sivan's like, oh yeah, we got in around 10 o'clock. We're like, well, we know that isn't true because we caught you and we have your camera. Now, they had rewound the date back 14 hours and 41 minutes. So from the camera, you couldn't tell exactly what the date is. So on these pictures, when it says 9:10, that's because it's 14 hours ago. It is something I noticed, though, is in one of the pictures you see the timestamp is in the bottom right-hand corner. And in another picture, an earlier picture, because they're on the roof of the van, as witnessed by Maria, it's Yarn and Sivan, and the timestamp is now vertical, and it's in the lower left-hand corner, which means they went from landscape to portrait or whatever. But what's above their head that you need to do that for? But it's all whited out and cut off. But like, wait, that should be larger. If the date's in that corner, then this shouldn't be a square. It should be a rectangle in this direction because it's a rectangle in the other direction.
I notice about
this is how
those
autistic
pictures.
I am about this crap.
Yeah, you're extremely autistic about it, but I did notice myself when they came out and I was looking at them, because what happened is there were pictures from their cameras seized by the police, given to the FBI, and were secret for a very long time, and a FOIA request was just made, and then these sort of looked like they were done on like a photocopy machine and then like overexposed or something. They released them. Why not just release the actual pictures? Like why
the actual
release
pictures
these?
may have been burned because I did FOIA requests for all of them. It's a lot harder for me because I don't live in the country, so I have a higher standards to go through.
Yeah.
My original one was when I still lived in the U.S., so I got all the text documents which mention the photographs. There's 72 on one camera and there are 4 on another camera. And then apparently there was a video camera witness, but they didn't find that in the van, so that had been passed off to someone else. That someone else is named Karen. I forget her last name right now, but
Karen.
She had spent the night in Brooklyn with the brothers on September 10th because they had a big party, on a random Monday night, as you do. Maybe they're wrestling fans, but
You do if you're like a hipster with you're like an art student hipster. Sure, I don't want to drink every night.
Monday Night Raw. That's what they were doing. Go watch Goldberg.
Well, they were art students, right? They were art students, right?
no, but there were art students from Israel spying on the DEA, mainly in Florida, but really all over the country.
Because you know what?
And that's
know,
another one of these retard things. Be like, oh, the Israeli art students in the towers. Look up the Gelatin B team and.
Somebody said to me one time, and it was like, this is one of the reasons why I was like dismissing 9/11 stuff for a while. He was like, well, these Israeli art students that were caught by the FBI, and how do you apply thermite to a surface? You paint it.
Oh my god!
And I was
Thermite
like,
is nothing.
I was like,
but
wait,
rust and
let's say that's true. I don't know anything about thermite, so let's say that's true.
Thermite.
Why do you need an art student to paint thermite on like I don't even want to go into.
'Cause they're
so
Israeli.
It's so dumb.
It's like
Thermite
only
is
an
a
art
very
student
unreliable.
can paint it.
As if you're gonna time something to go pop, 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 you're not gonna use thermite. That's why we don't use it in real demolitions. It totally can cut through anything really. It's hot except for maybe some irons and stuff. But like, yeah, it would work. But if you're that's so dumb. And we already had another team
Should've used
caught
tannerite.
breaking the fire.
Fill the
This
whole
is
tower
something
with
vital.
tannerite. Shoot.
So triggered by Diamond Kook shit. But there was a team led by a man from Jerusalem named Khalid Odala caught illegally doing work in at least one of the towers with a pass dated September 5th, working on the fire prevention systems, which weren't supposed to be doing that. The company they worked for wasn't a real business. It was just a residential address in New York. And two guys, Sergey Denko of Denko Mechanical, that it was named after, Magic Heating and Plumbing, and David Connell, they've both been subpoenaed. I have the letter from the district attorney. It's on ANC report, but they had faked reference letters for fire suppression credentials that they didn't really exist. Like, they just made them up so that they could certify these people and create a team to go in and work in the Port Authority is supposed to be dealing with this, and they blamed it on saying, oh well, it must have been a tenant in the building that hired them, which ended up being Zim, who moved to Norfolk shortly before September 11th and broke like a $55,000 on their lease or something. I don't remember the exact amount, but a lot. And that's half owned by the Israeli government, by the way. But these guys had broken the fire prevention system. So if the sprinklers didn't come on, you're assuring that fire is going to fuck up the building. You don't need to do that if you have bombs in every floor. Right. There's no purpose in breaking the fire suppression systems if you were just going to blow it up. There is some evidence for van bombs below, just like the World Trade Center bombing in '93. And I just give people, the evidence, so they can make their mind up on it. I'm not dogmatic about this. Like, I stick to what I can prove. But it apparently, the cops did find explosive devices parked in a van, and the chief of the fire department and cops had said they were finding bombs, truck bombs, in the parking garages of the World Trade Center. What I believe the plan was, based on them calling the police and saying, oh, we've seen this Palestinian bomb makers at the airport mixing a bomb and headed toward the Holland Tunnel. And it was coincidentally, the cops said, oh, really? So they shut down all entrances, the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge, and near the George Washington Bridge, they end up nabbing, oh, look, this van we're looking for anyway, right? So the whole thing fell apart, and they abandoned the whole truck bomb story of Palestinians. But it seemed like they were the cops, the media, Rick Sanchez, Pat Dawson, they had reported on van bombs. And apparently the plan was going to be to blow out the basement levels so that the first floor fell into the basement levels. And then, of course, you have the plane hit above. So everybody in there would have been stuck. The fire department couldn't go up. The people couldn't go out. And there would have been about 50,000 dead instead of 3.
Jesus.
But the lobbies did not completely collapse, and most people below the impact zone at least did get out. Everyone above it, almost everyone above it, they died. Of course, everybody directly in it died, and we lost over 2,900, and you add the people on the plane as well. But that could have been a lot worse. And they already had the media in play. They had dancing Palestinians, like they had tape ready. They had a call about Palestinian bomb makers that was ready. And they had comparisons to Pearl Harbor, not comparisons to the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. No.
Right.
They completely botched that operation. As you know, the FBI made the bomb.
Well,
they compared to Pearl Harbor. Why? Because Pearl Harbor justified nuclear weapons.
They had Osama bin Laden like that day. They, I remember.
They knew immediately who this was.
Yeah, and
actually, they've been saying it for years.
It's sort of like
Cole and
my senses at the time were not attuned to any of this. Like, I was not in the mindset to start looking at this. And I was skeptical, but I wasn't at all. Like, now when I see these things, I'm like right on it, like looking for all this stuff that's going on. Like with Notre Dame, remember, Notre Dame catches fire. And while it's still burning on the news, oh, don't worry, we're sure that this isn't arson.
It's not arson.
We know, we have experts saying all they have to do on the news is say, oh, the government or government experts or industry experts or some experts are assuring us that this is not arson. It's like, dude, it's still on fire.